When watching the news on television, you possibly ask yourself if any of the many problems can ever be solved. Will there always be wars? In which way can we make immigration policy more humane? In view of these many changes in today's society, how can we hold firm? We are in search for answers. Perhaps we ask ourselves what our own contribution to today's society could be. To answer these life questions, we need insight and wisdom. However, can we seek wisdom in our brain? Or is the consciousness that plays an important role? Earlier, we showed you that everything is consciousness, and that all these consciousnesses are interconnected, being one. Just now, it was mentioned that human beings can only exist thanks to the cooperation of consciousnesses. In this lecture, we will further explore and discover where answers to these life questions can be found. Therefore, we will set out on a journey through the various states of consciousness. In this way, you can find out for yourself what is true and what the possibilities are to enlarge your vision in this matter. Setting out on this journey within ourselves, we have to be aware that we have to let go of our present habitual way of thinking. It is as though we are putting down our old classes and replacing them by new classes to look at the world and our place within it again. In doing so, you will not only get a picture of the world and yourself as it is now, but also you also will get a picture of how the world and your role within it could be and maybe even should be.
A quotation by Gandhi in Ethic Religion says, man has two windows to his mind. Through one he can see his own self as it is, through the other he can see what he should be. We have the capacity within ourselves to take into mind an ideal and how we would like to be seen. The same we can do with the world. How would our ideal world look like?
Steeds meer een werkelijkheid voor u zou worden, als u zich daarop concentreert en mee vereenzelvigt.
During this weekend, together, we will try to examine if this is really the case.
Waar het zich op richt, ofwel waar het zich mee identificeert. We zullen in ieder geval met elkaar deze dagen.
First, we will take a look at the different states in which our consciousness can remain.
We gaan eerst kijken naar de verschillende toestanden waar ons bewustzijn in kan verkeren.
First, we will take a look at the different states in which our consciousness can remain. A state of consciousness is something different than consciousness per se. Consciousness can remain in different states. Being awake, sleeping, dying are states in which our consciousness at different realms can remain. We assume that there has always been consciousness, that there is consciousness and there will be always consciousness. Only the way in which consciousness is able to express itself is subject to change. Our consciousness is alternating between a waking state, a dream state, and dreamless sleep. When we are awake, our consciousness is always able to remain in different states. For example, when we are intellectually studying, or when we are fully engaged in watching a movie or listening to beautiful music, but also changing emotional moods in which we feel angry, happy, or sad. It is important to realize that we experience certain states passively, or we have developed a knowledge or insight within ourselves to raise above certain states. This means that with full control we can enter into a state through which other qualities of our consciousness can be manifested deliberately. For example, in the past we were very impatient. By training, we have now learned to deal with it and can handle certain situations with a lot of patience. So by studying and training ourselves in different states, we train our discernment. By doing so, we are also able to recognize the state we're in and make a self-conscious choice in which position in life we want to be.
The first state, or the first plane, is waking state. For us, this is the external world in which we are awake and in which we are more or less consciously have our experiences. Later we will discuss this more in depth. The second state is the dreaming state. This is the state in which we remain when we are sleeping. The consciousness has withdrawn from the physical plane and has left our body. Our consciousness functions in another plane of existence, a mental, emotional realm, another plane of existence. Because we are not fully familiar yet in that realm, we cannot act fully consciously. Instead of being in charge, we undergo the experiences more passively. The experiences are a reflection of the emotional events that we experienced in daytime. Remember a day when we have a quarrel with our neighbor or when we have blissful experiences when we are in love. It is the realm of desires, fears and emotions like jealousy or blissful feelings. In this state, we will have experiences in accordance with these feelings. In this state, we will never reap anything different than we have sown. This can be from the previous day or longer periods back. It is a more inner state of our consciousness, but definitely not yet a spiritual state. In this state, everything still evolves around the own personal I. In this state, the great spiritual vision is still absent.
The third state is the dreamless sleep. It may sound strange, but the dreamless sleep is a very spiritual state of consciousness because it is a state of self-forgetfulness. In this state, the personality does not play any role anymore. As the spiritual qualities in daily life of most of us do not predominate yet, we are not able yet to have self-consciously experiences in this spiritual state. That is the reason why we experience this state as a dreamless sleep. If spiritually developed much better, we would be able to have experiences in this state, just like in a waking state. As this is not the case for most of people, we experience very little or even nothing at all. Therefore, we consciously take very little to nothing with us when we wake up. This state is not an extinguished consciousness, but an extremely active conscious at a spiritual level. However, there are times that we are able to experience something of this state of consciousness. For example, when we are going to bed with the question of life, or when we want to help someone in which the importance of the other is paramount. Then it is possible that we will wake up with an insight in the solution. In this way, an experience from our highest consciousness has been taken to our waking consciousness.
The fourth state of consciousness is the experiencing of unity. In the present stage of our evolution, it's very difficult for us to get an idea of it. According to wisdom literature, this state is 1,000 times more spiritual than the third state. Although our deepest core is living in this state now already, the average man has not yet developed this state of consciousness. As you can see, our consciousness can remain in different states. Now we can look at the world in daily life, our waking state, from different views. Views which correspond with the planes of consciousness we just mentioned. The waking state we can subdivide in different substates or visions, which, for the purpose of this lecture, we may refer to as pairs of glasses. A materialistic pair of glasses corresponds with the waking state. Mental, emotional glasses with the dreaming state. And spiritual glasses correspond with the dreamless sleep. There's also a fourth pair of glasses, but their vision is so abstract for us that today we will not use them. The pair of glasses through which you are looking will determine your vision on life. From which vision you look at life determines what you see and experience. From your materialistic pair of glasses, you only perceive through your senses. How the outside world appears to you is how you react. The majority of people consider the world of sensory perception, thoughts, feelings, and physical things as the only reality. They assume that when their physical body does not function anymore, their life ends. Their assumptions are based on the thought you only live once. This is also called the hole of ignorance. With ignorance is meant that we shall have no awareness of the force behind the outer world. From your mental, emotional pair of glasses, you perceive everything from yourself. You react from your own point of view on the basis of your own feelings, your own desires, and personal judgments towards the outer world. In this way, we create a personal, emotional reality. We make choices in life because it feels right. Perhaps in this state we are less focused on the outer life. However, we certainly are not spiritual, as we are still aware of our personality. Our I still plays a dominant role. We sense that there must be more, but we are not able yet to give it a place. We experience something of another state of our consciousness, but it is still very vague. It can be compared to fantasizing and daydreaming. Everything is possible, however, we cannot make it concrete. Or we can be touched by someone's sorrow, however, we lack the understanding and deeper insight to fully support that person in a meaningful way.
From your spiritual pair of glasses, you no longer perceive distinction between yourself and the outside world. All things are related. In that spiritual state, the observer and what he observes are one. We no longer make a distinction between ourselves and the world around us. We see the total cohesion and oneness of all. We see the outer world as the consequence of a greater reality. It is no longer personal interest, the general interest is paramount. Because we perceive life from a bigger perspective, we can see the causes and effects of events that take place around us. We then know that the solutions are to be found in man himself. In conclusion, we may say that with our materialistic pair of glasses, we only perceive matter, the outside. We consider ourselves separate from others. With our mental, emotional glasses, we react on basis of our own feelings and our own points of view. Through our spiritual pair of glasses, we recognize the unity in everything. The different states in our daily life. On one day we can wear different pairs of glasses. Which type of glasses we wear is determined by the capabilities within ourselves that we use and which capabilities that we keep dormant in the background. If, for example, we feel hungry and respond to this by eating something, then we are focused on our physical condition. However,
diep in ons
if we're
werk
completely
verdronken
absorbed
zijn
by
en
work,
daar
it
zo
is
in
possible that we
opgaan,
forget to
dan kan het
eat.
gebeuren dat we helemaal vergeten te eten.
At that moment,
En op dat moment
we have moved our physical condition to the background because we found our work more important.
Dit is ook van
This
toepassing
also
op een
applies in
emotioneel.
case of an emotional condition.
We kunnen vanuit een
We
emotie
can react
reageren,
emotional,
wat vaak leidt
but
tot
most of the
verdriet,
times that does not help.
maar we kunnen
Or
ook
we can
vanuit
react
begrip
with
en
understanding and insight,
waardoor we de
which enables
situatie
us to
beter
find better solutions.
En hiermee
In that
zetten we
case,
onze
we have
hogere
moved our
vermogens
higher
naar
powers
boven.
more to the forefront.
Dit is niet statisch,
This is not
maar
static.
gaat continu
Continuously we
over
switch
ene
from one
toestand
state of
naar de andere.
consciousness to another.
Het ene moment
One
zijn we
moment we are
ontevreden
happy
of hebben we
or we
honger.
are hungry.
Het andere
Another
moment
moment
zijn
we
bezig
are
met
on an
een
intellectual plane
vraagstuk
trying to solve a
en
problem,
later verdiepen
and
we
again
ons in
later
het
we can immerse ourselves in the current
We
problems
kunnen
of the
daar
world.
uiteindelijk zelf richten
We
aan
actually can direct this process as we like, depending on our willpower and motivation.
De kwaliteit van ons
The quality of
bewustzijn
our consciousness
kan dus
can therefore
variëren van
vary from
lichamelijke
physical
bezigheden,
activities
zoals
such as sport or
koken,
cooking
tot
to
meer
more spiritual
kwaliteiten,
qualities such
zoals
as
het
the
verdiepen in
contemplation
levensvragen.
about the bigger questions of life.
Als we naar
When
de
we
wereld
look
om
at the
ons heen
world
kijken,
around us,
dan zien we
then we
over
do
het
not
algemeen
see
genomen dat
spiritual
twee
qualities to be
kwaliteiten niet
dominant.
echt de overhand hebben.
Personal
Persoonlijke belangen
interest
gaan
most of the
meestal
time is more prominent.
We bekijken
We
de
then view the world
relatie
through the
tot
lower
anderen,
two
waardoor
pair
het
of
leven van het
glasses, as a
mededogen
result of which compassion is more in the background.
Onze visie is nog
Our
beperkt,
vision is still
maar we
limited,
hebben
but
alles
we
in
have
om
all
deze
powers
visie
in
steeds
ourselves available
spiritueler te laten
to
worden.
make it more spiritual.
De meer
These spiritual qualities are still dormant because our daily consciousness is not focused on it. We do not realize as yet what the effect of a spiritual state of consciousness could be for the totality. Still, there are those tiny moments, however, when we receive a glimpse from our highest nature's influence. Remember these aha moments you had. Without doubt, you recognize these moments. We are beginning to see the light, people then say. During the day, we constantly switch between these three different ways how to look at life. The three pairs of glasses, those three ways how to look at life, we will apply on different cases. We will analyze our brain. We explore places where we think truth can be found, and we enlarge our views on the issue of helping others. Often, and with good intentions, we decide to help, but not always it's the help which is needed most. Maybe true helping is helping people to help themselves. We will find out. Let us first analyze our brain with the help of our three different pair of glasses.
When we look at our brain with our materialistic pair of glasses, then we see millions of brain cells determining what we think and do. They control our movements, our senses, emotions, memory, and the words we speak. Through this pair of glasses, we believe that our brain function will improve, and we can function better the more we use our brain. For the changes which take place during the teenage years of a child, we then blame to the brain of a child in puberty. Our child is difficult because his brain is changing. There is all kinds of stuff in his brain being broken down and created. When we share those ideas with our children, it can happen that your daughter, after she's been naughty, tells you, "Yes, Mom, I really can't help it. It was my brain making me do it." If we think we are only our body, then we also might conclude that our brain, in an inexplainable way, produces our consciousness. How that works, we cannot figure out with our materialistic pair of glasses, because no one has discovered yet where the I am conscious can be found or where the self-consciousness is located in the brain. There are scientists and philosophers who argue that the I am consciousness is a product of the communication between our millions of brain cells. Such, however, is only a faked theory. There is no proof at all. When we look at our brain with our mental-emotional pair of glasses, then we're beginning to realize that we ourselves have an influence on our brain. We assume that our mental-emotional condition determines how our brain works. This idea we recognize from several scientific tests, which from it seem to appear that meditation has a longer-lasting effect on the functioning of the brain. When we look at our brain from this perspective, then we assume that our way of thinking, how we feel, determines changes in our brain. With our spiritual pair of glasses, we understand that an essential boundless consciousness is the power behind our brain. We know man is a reincarnating being with unlimited possibilities and eternal at its core. We understand our physical body and its brain is just a temporary instrument and not essential for what we really are. Now, let us go on a quest to search for a place where we think we can find truth with the help of our 3 pair of glasses.
Looking through our materialistic pair of glasses, we think we can find the truth in the material world. It is about the collection of material pieces of evidence. We believe man and the world he lives in is what we perceive with our outer senses. He did not make himself. And it is impossible for us to find solutions for the problems we see in the world. Our life depends on the circumstances, our DNA, our brain. We assume we can eventually find all the answers in the material world. When using our mental-emotional pair of glasses, we know truth can be found in ourselves. We learn that the way we look at the world determines what happens and that we have an influence. But we still have our own opinions and points of view. We still feel ourselves separate from the rest of the world. There's no understanding yet that everything is connected with everything else. Now, with our spiritual pair of glasses, we discover truth in consciousness as cause of all things. We find truth in universality, and that means that if it works for one thing, it should work for all things. When we look at the world we live in with these pair of glasses, then we have a wider vision. We see the entire book and not just one page of it, you might say. We still recognize problems such as the growing gap between rich and poor or the environment, but using our spiritual pair of glasses, we will find much different solutions. These are problems caused by the selfishness of man himself, who is chasing his own comfort and possessions, whereas in the eternity of consciousness, these are very temporary things. By way of developing insight, we discover a greater truth about life. We recognize all people are connected with each other, as a result of which our functioning as human beings gets a completely new meaning. Now, let us investigate which different ways there are to help, and which results these different ways bring us.
When using our materialistic pair of glasses, help will be focused on the physical plane. For instance, when it concerns our health. We then take an aspirin when we have a headache. It temporarily relieves us from a discomfort. We can extend this idea to helping countries where there is poverty. We donate money which can be used for buying medicines, foods and goods for these poor countries. In such a way, we support other people, which indeed is absolutely necessary. We only should ask ourselves, is this help also takes away the cause of the problem? With our mental emotional pair of classes, our help is based on emotional feelings. We would like to see others feeling good, being happy. When touched by other people's problems and suffering, it might happen that we become ourselves emotional. We have identified ourselves so much with the situation of other people that we suffer with them. The help we provide is based on what we think is good for the other. We project our ideas on them. But do we really know what is best for him if we do not know him well enough? We do not have full knowledge yet about ourselves, because we do not assume yet the divine consciousness we are essentially. Therefore, we lack understanding of the circumstances why others are as they are, and do not have the knowledge which can tell us what the other essentially needs. With our spiritual pair of classes, we will help knowledge and discernment. We recognize justice in life and understand what is needed to help others. It sometimes perhaps seems life is unfair. Why, for instance, a child is born in a refugee camp. But when you look at things from a wider perspective, you recognize cause and effect. Even when you do not understand which circumstances exactly were the cause of a horrible war, you still know that it must have come from behavior of mankind itself. Our help is not meaningless. Now, knowing this, that stimulates us to help and have compassion. We can help others in such a way that they can learn to take care of themselves. That gives them the opportunity to discover their own powers and to activate these.
When we give help to the world in such a manner, then a more humane mentality will emerge. For instance, we will provide shelter in this country to refugees, and we would help them to initiate changes in their home country, so they can go back without fear and contribute to a better situation at home. Helping others in a way they learn to take care of themselves is based on the Raja Yoga system. Catherine Tingley reintroduced in the world this method of teaching, which is found in the Theosophical. She assumed the divine is present in everything. She gave us keys to use for teaching children how to think instead of what to think. By way of helping others, they develop their own inner powers. Should you wish to learn more about this subject, then we invite you to our symposium next year, when it will be the main theme. We can learn very much from idealists such as Nelson Mandela, Gandhi, or Martin Luther King when we study their ideas. Martin Luther King, with his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, he revealed to us his dream, his ideal. An ideal based on justice and equality. A very good example to recognize universality. We also recognize in their lives a true understanding of compassion when they began building their ideal. They shared without any self-interest their knowledge and understanding for the benefit of all. They inspire others by being themselves a living example of the ideal they envisage. Working together, confidence based on knowledge and insight, empathy and compassion are all qualities required to express these great ideals. These are all qualities already available to us and we can use. Everyone can imagine a way how to help someone else. A child can be an example for another child. As parents, we can do our job to the best of our abilities, and as employers and employees, we can work together, realizing our ideals. Once we live in accordance with our highest ideals and a common interest in mind, we will definitely contribute to a better world. Because we understand unity and inner connectedness is a fact, and through our pair of spiritual glasses, we see the effects of a compassionate life.
This completes our inward journey. We discovered that we can look at the world from different states of consciousness. Which pair of glasses you wear determines what you see and what you experience. We also discovered that truth can be found in the higher spheres of our consciousness. Understanding the three pairs of consciousness glasses provides us with a wider vision on life. This way we can decide ourselves which role we want to play in the world we live. We only have to learn how to fulfill that role. You have an opportunity this afternoon in our workshops to start with this. These workshops are a road to discovery, experiencing a world seen through a pair of spiritual glasses. Thank you very much for your attention.
Oké, dames en heren.
Opportunity for you to ask some questions. Going back to the dreaming state, you are telling us that there is consciousness leaving our body. Is that true? It is true.
Ja, dat vind ik moeilijk. Daar heb ik moeite mee, want
I think it's difficult. I don't understand, because if consciousness leaves our body, are we not closer to death? First of all, we say, Patricia, what do you want? Okay. Herman is afraid for complaints. First of all, if you want to follow us, we are not saying that a consciousness is in the body, but more it is, let's try me to describe it, that it's a power, that it's a magnetic power that around the body surrounds, and that the body is a physical focus point. The main point is that if you look at man, it's an enormous combination of consciousnesses who work together. A kidney is an example, brains is an example of, there's a group of consciousness working together. There is a supervising consciousness using all these consciousness to express itself. It is the old idea of emanation from the Platonic thinkers, not as good worked out as with Dr. de Perrucke. So it is about man is supervising consciousness, working together, attracting many other consciousnesses. And that cooperation we call a man is functioning. But it's the thinker on his mental plane which is controlling and all these other consciousness. They must have something which is in accordance with it, otherwise it does not function. And we therefore say my atoms have something and that's the reason why they want to work with me. You will not find it in physics, but that's my point of view. That's how you have to look at what a man is. We are not a body, we have a body. We are not our brains, we have brains. We are not the heart, we have a heart. So it is the spiritual hierarchy of consciousness working together, expressing the supervising consciousness. In my case, it's Herman Vermeulen, with only positive ideas. That's what we are trying to explain here. There's another. What? Okay. I missed that one, sorry. I'm very happy with your clear answers, but in this case, I don't think you gave an answer. Are you not something like that if your consciousness is, if you're in your dreamless sleep, are you dead? Can you try to explain that again? And there's another question. What, in your opinion, is the best way to resonate with the universal consciousness? There we go. First question. Let me try to explain. That's what's playing a role with these pair of glasses and with the consciousness on this plane. You are there where you feel connected, where you are connected with. So we say, if you're in a dreamless state and when you are dead, you are still there, but on a different state, on other planes. So the dreamless sleep for us, our consciousness is on a plane where he doesn't have not self-conscious experiences. That's why we experience it as dreamless. You have to look at it. You take your daughter to a university from a wonderful professor. Your child is listening to it, but she didn't understand anything at all because she didn't develop any thoughts about the subject. That's exactly the same what we are saying about the dreamless state, the Turiya state. It's even more. In other literature, but also in ours, the nirvanische state of consciousness. Buddhism, very high state of consciousness. This has been very discussion because the Buddhists were saying everything is exhausted, everything is gone. There's no I any longer. We didn't understand it for a long time until Theosophy explained that there still was something, what a higher self is called, and that you can be active there on a nirvanic situation, and then you can experience it, but not on the personal level with separateness and feelings. But you have to be very universal. Then we were talking about near-death experiences. People who have a certain vision, net on a certain period when they are almost dead, and then they come back. So that's the clue of the story. If you go on a holiday and if you go to a place where your wife forces you to go, you do not have any affinity, you do not see anything, and if you go to a place where you also like it, where you had your experiences, you're building up an affinity with the place, and you live in that consciousness. Yeah. Okay.
I said it in the holidays. You have to how do you describe this? How can you realize this boundless? It's difficult. It's almost impossible. There are all metaphors for this. This evening, if you will come, I hope, you will have all kinds of discussions by a German professor who will give all kinds of examples from Buddhism. He's talking about this ocean with waves. How do you tune in? You do this by thinking.
Okay. You can look at the news and you see a horrible situation, war in Africa, all over. You can immerse into your emotional glasses and you look at it with your spiritual glasses and ask yourself, why is it like that? Wonderment, imagination, what's happening over there? What should we do to make a change there? How? And then you will find out, if you have thought it once or twice, okay, we are buying all kind of minerals from over there, and we don't care from which we buy it as long as we get them. But in fact, we are stimulating, we stimulate all kind of conflicts over there. So you are, in fact, expanding your consciousness. You can also ask yourself, what's the Earth, the planet Earth, in the solar system? What's the solar system in the Milky Way? If there is infinity, is there a beginning? Big Bang Theory or steady state? Those are elements to train yourself. If you're in the lunch break, go pass our books, and then you will from our workers, you will get some tips of books where you can use to train yourself. I ask myself if emotions are memories of past experiences. Why do you get angry or get emotional? Is it because it reminds you of something from the past, or can you make a choice there? Twice, yes. Yes, of course you have your memories, you have your affinity. If you have been to the dentist and you have to go there again, you remember what will happen now. These are memories. If you've never been to a dentist, if you don't know what it is, you go in there without any idea. Well, to get an experience, of course. Yeah. Well, there's a dentist in the room, yes, and we are good friends. Yeah. We work together nicely. But do you make a choice for that? Yes, you do. But unconsciously acting is also making a decision, and that's we do not always realize. Yes, you make a connection with something, conscious or unconsciously. You make a connection, you make a link, and so you make a choice. You study the news, you look at the news, you make a link with these events, intellectual or spiritually. Okay. It's also having a nice lunch. Build up the same link. Can it be that emotions are a tension of the higher consciousness and the lower consciousness which is not connecting with it? There's only a short answer, and that's no. Can you explain? Yes. You know, you have to realize that we get prickles from our own stimuli. If we are stimulated by a nice picture, then it brings something about with us. When there is a picture with a deeper, more spiritual quality, it can be music as well. What you can have is that you can have emotions in that plane. Something is happening, perhaps. As soon as you get in contact with it, the higher qualities will complete it. We are not a thinker on just one tone. We are an instrument, makes very different, many tones. We have many thoughts and feelings and emotions, things which is coming to us, hundreds at the same time, and we not all respond to them, but we respond. Is that an example between environment and you want to save nature and you cut a tree, you see somebody cutting a tree, and then you get your emotion. You're not very happy with that. An ideal can be, I want to save all trees. But that's universal, but it doesn't have to be from a high spiritual quality. But if you assume the infinity, nothing can be lost, then you can ask yourself, what do we want? Do I want one tree, save one tree, or do, as a good gardener, I have to cut a tree to save the rest? You can also say nature has to do it itself, but then we are going from the point of view that we should not create a garden, because a garden is not natural. I have never seen an English lawn growing out of itself. Yeah. I have a question about getting more insight, understanding. Do I get it by thinking more, or do I get it by being very quiet? But meditation, how do you look at that? Well, one is not different from the other. Being quiet doesn't say that you're not thinking. We say, as human thinker in a waking state, you cannot stop the thinking process, you can only manage it, control it. You can say, I want to concentrate, focus on one subject and try to eliminate other subjects. And many methods of meditation which are practiced are actually methods who are just a starting point to meditation, but are not real meditation. They're techniques to get peace and quiet, but you make use of the peace and quietness to realize a focus on one spiritual subject. Okay, but we have a special course for that, 12 lessons going through the thinking process. But because if you know how the thinking process works and how you can manage it, it's much more easier. I hope this answers your question. Well, more or less, yeah. I will think about it. Can you explain a little bit more about helping other people and helping yourself? I've received a piece of paper from the Socratic method, and well, the midwife, I want to learn more about that. If you have been there this morning, then you have 3 midwives. And some aid in the well, or we are exchanging ideas, and Socrates was very consequent in that by asking his questions and responding to it, going to the background of the questions and the answers, until finally arrived at the quintessence of the problem. As an example, I mentioned a problem in Africa. Where exactly is the problem, in Africa or somewhere else, with us or only there? And so it is. And so you can help somebody else to realize where his problem is and his questions are. A good psychiater will tell you nothing different. He is helping, telling patient telling his story, and then the patient tells him what's wrong with him. And of course, he will give it his medical opinion, but in fact, it's the patient explaining himself what's wrong with him. And the next question. Okay, all right. In addition, what you are saying, the patient is telling what he is missing, and the patient also is telling what will help him. And the psychiatrist is only a mirror for the patient, but the patient has to recognize that himself. one of the nice things, if you can describe the question very carefully yourself, that's why I'm always enjoying giving answers to these questions. Yeah. Does the world has a consciousness? What do you mean with the world? Well, as we live here, yes. Can we lift that consciousness as residents of this planet? Yes, of course you can. Individual contributions will help on the total. There's a lot of work then. Yeah, of course, yes. I'm not saying that one person, all the others, have to lift all the others himself. What you can do, as the symbol is with one candle lighting all the other candles, so all the other candles will be in a better quality. Okay. It's quite simple. If all the cells in my body function well, I have a better instrument than when there are a couple of them not that good. If you look at our healthcare situation, then we can say it's sick. Then we can say sickness, we make it stronger by the way we're looking at it. We do not solve the problem. Okay, sickness is a missing of consciousness. If we live in a material world where sickness, through consciousness, that curing sickness takes a lot of time and people to get in balance with the sickness and let it go. You are a dentist? No, he's not. Well, his friend is a dentist. Yeah. Oh, he is a dentist. Well, there are more dentists in the room. And I've seen in my practice that placement of teeth are very strong. It takes some lives. How do we manage in this world to improve the healthcare in this world? I would say the sickness influences like such a way that we can manage it again. Yeah. He likes the words behapbaar. Well, we have to realize it's the other way around for us. It's consciousness which is in disharmony, and that's the reason why sickness appears in the body. Or you have to look at the patient and say, why does your what's the reason you have a problem with your teeth? That's one. And the other way, the other thing, we have to realize that during our lifetime, our physical condition changes. That's also depending on our consciousness. Getting to age in a certain way always continuously take place. We do not care about that because it's about the consciousness. And in the past, it was like that. At a certain age, you lose all your teeth, and now we have all kind of good techniques, nice techniques, to keep that thing functioning, and that we have all kind of transplants to keep our teeth. But you have to realize that our vision on medicines is changing as well. Well, the quintessence of the story is that it's the consciousness using the lower natures, using and misuse of it. Maybe I have a nice addition to that. Well, this is a dentist story. Now, from the biological point of view, the question is asked. The thought is, does the material still fit in the biological, in the nature? What in this case is the result of consciousness. So also titanium is a result of consciousness, but is there a resonance between titanium and the natural material where it's placed in, and that are we active with material things, creating something on a short notice to find a solution, but what we are actually doing with it on the long term. This is an idea, a thought to think about. What are we doing in the development where we want to go? That's the question of the shorter or the longer solution. On the shorter period of time, titanium works as an implant, but what's the effect of too much titanium in my body? Amalgam is also a typical discussion. In the dental technology, there are doctors saying that all the amalgam should be taken out, but there are others saying, well, if it's stable, it's okay, no problem. You can also wonder yourself, is that always stable with all my chewing? So it's always the question, are we living in harmony with each other? And are we using the possibility as we are in hierarchy and harmony, or are we in disharmony? On the shorter notice solutions, which are giving us new problems, then we have to conclude that we didn't understand it that well after all. There's nuclear energy, of course. Is it a blessing or is it a punishment? Usually, if you do not manage it and bring it in harmony with society, it brings eventually always problems. And that's also on the mental plane, of course. Mental communication with each other. Are we doing that in harmony or not with each other? The emotional pair of glasses, the second pair of glasses, and the spiritual pair of glasses. I think I use the second pair of glasses so very well because I can be disgusting feeling. I can feel very disgusted about so many things. So I need that second pair of glasses. So I need that second pair of glasses, please. Okay? You don't have to agree with it. What happens? Something happens to you and you react to it with your emotions. But you also can think about reacting to it with another part of your being, and that perhaps you should prefer. But you have to ask yourself, I'm talking about negative emotions. It has an enormous effect on the harmony. So sometimes it takes a lot of time before things calm down. Think about all the beings you work together with. Strong emotion comes in, and these will be shocked and not very healthy for them, not spiritually. It can be changed. We go. Okay, we have to say something about the lunch break, Patrice. Thank you very much.